What if I told you that, like, the exact blueprint for modern fake news, deep fakes, and, algorithmic manipulation wasn't actually invented in a Silicon Valley boardroom?
Right. Yeah, it sounds like a massive stretch at first.
It really does, but it was
So,
actually mapped out in the dusty streets of Athens 2,400 years ago.
which is just chilling when you actually look at the historical texts.
Yeah.
Because we tend to think, or at least I do, that we are uniquely burdened by this, post-truth society.
Oh, absolutely. We think social media algorithms somehow invented the whole concept of hacking human perception for profit.
Right, but the ancients mapped this exact cognitive wilderness long before we had screens to stare at.
And then that is exactly what we are unpacking today. So
Right.
welcome to this deep dive. Our mission today is basically to go on a massive, relentless intellectual hunt.
A really intense one, yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. We are looking at a giant stack of briefing documents, historical analyses, and primary text excerpts, all centered on what I genuinely believe is like one of the most rigorous, mind-bending detective stories ever written.
It really is a detective story.
We are opening up Plato's classical masterpiece, the Sophist.
And, this text is essentially a foundational masterclass in worldview discernment. We are hunting the sophist.
Which is the ancient Greek term for a specific kind of intellectual mercenary, right?
Exactly. But for our purposes today, the sophist is the ancient architect of the counterfeit reality. He's the original peddler of the illusion.
The guy who basically figured out how to use language and logic not to find the truth, but to trap people in a manufactured reality.
Right. So he could extract money, power, and applause from them.
So we're going to figure out exactly how Plato systematically traps this intellectual con artist. We're going to look at the actual mechanics of the trap.
Which are fascinating.
Yeah, and we'll explore how Plato literally has to break the established laws of physics and logic of his own era to do it.
He commits philosophical murder to do it,
Yeah,
basically.
he does. And then we're going to look at how this towering monument of classical philosophy completely shatters or at least shifts when you place it next to the vibrant, personal, redemptive history found in Scripture.
Right. Because by the end of this conversation, the goal is for you, the listener, to walk away with a much sharper intellectual whetstone.
Yeah, a real framework to see through the relativistic fog of our own time.
Because the traps the sophists set in the Athenian marketplace are the exact same traps being set on your timeline today. I mean, the architecture of deception doesn't change, right? Only the technology does.
That is so true. To understand the sheer gravity of this text, we really have to look at how the story opens.
The setup is wild.
Right off the bat, the narrative framing gives us this massive, almost disorienting paradigm shift. Because anyone who has ever, cracked open a standard philosophy textbook knows that Plato's main guy, his star player, is Socrates.
The ultimate gadfly.
Yes, Socrates is the gadfly. He is the guy who walks around the marketplace, corners a politician or a general, and asks them to define something simple, like courage or justice.
And then he just completely dismantles their definition.
Exactly. He asks these relentless, annoying questions until his opponents realize they actually know absolutely nothing.
Right. And the Greeks called this state aporia.
Aporia, yeah.
It's the state of being intellectually stuck, where a conversation just ends in a state of confused puzzle solving. And usually, that's where a Platonic dialogue ends.
With everyone just scratching their heads and Socrates kind of smiling.
Yeah, exactly. But in the Sophist, which takes place the exact day after another famous dialogue called the Theaetetus, there is a huge shock. Socrates steps back.
He becomes a completely silent auditor.
It is a startling literary move. I mean, imagine going to see a legendary rock band. All right. The charismatic frontman walks out on stage, the crowd goes absolutely wild, and then he just sits down on an amplifier, crosses his arms, and lets a completely unknown, uncredited session musician play the entire 2-hour set.
That is such a good analogy. That is essentially what Plato is doing here. Socrates introduces this new main speaker, a mysterious figure simply called the Eleatic Stranger, and then Socrates just shuts up.
He really does.
He does make one comment before he goes quiet, though, which is this brilliant piece of literary irony. Socrates playfully wonders out loud if this new Eleatic Stranger is actually a Homeric god in disguise.
Right, referencing the Odyssey.
Yeah, where gods would wander the earth looking like ordinary, ragged travelers just to judge human hubris and arrogance.
So Socrates basically looks at this new guy and says, wait, Is this the god of refutation coming to destroy all of our poor arguments?
And then he just yields the floor, which, forces us to ask, why?
Right.
Why would Plato sideline the most famous philosophical character in history?
Well, to understand that, you really have to understand the historical trauma Athens was actively living through at the time.
Right. The context is incredibly grim.
The time for open-ended, Socratic questioning, that whole era of aporia and confused puzzle solving, was violently over.
Because Athens had just gone through the absolute devastation of the Peloponnesian War. I mean, their golden age had completely collapsed.
They lost their empire to Sparta. They suffered a horrific plague.
They endured the reign of the 30 tyrants, which was this bloody puppet government.
And historically speaking, Athens gets so paranoid and so exhausted by constant instability that they actually execute Socrates.
Yeah, they put him to death for his relentless questioning.
Because when a society is collapsing, the last thing they want is a guy walking around proving that no one knows what they are doing.
Yeah, nobody wants a puzzle when their house is on fire.
Exactly. Athens didn't need more open-ended puzzles.
Yeah.
They were desperate for hard, systematic, concrete answers. They really needed a robust defense mechanism against this smooth-talking politicians and demagogues who had, manipulated their democracy into ruin.
So Plato introduces the Eleatic stranger. He represents a drier, much more rigorous, almost clinical philosophical vocabulary.
Socrates was romantic, an ethical gadfly who wanted to sting you into being a better person.
But the stranger is a taxonomist. He really anticipates the cold, calculating logic of Aristotle. Plato is basically signaling to his readers the romantic era of philosophy is dead. We are at war for the truth, and a gadfly isn't going to cut it anymore. We need a surgical instrument.
And that surgical instrument is the core logical weapon of the entire text. It's a method the Greeks called dihairesis.
Dihairesis, right, which translates to the method of logical division.
Exactly.
I really want to visualize this for the listener because it's such a brilliant mental tool. Think of dihairesis like an algorithmic binary tree.
Or, given the language the stranger uses, think of it as a massive hunting net.
Oh yeah, a hunting net. You take a massive, overwhelming concept, like a huge category of reality, and you continually chop it in half.
You isolate your target on one side of the chop, and you basically throw the rest of the universe away.
And you keep dividing right and left until you corner your prey.
It is brilliant in its simplicity, but absolutely brutal in its execution. You don't try to define a complex thing out of thin air, because that leaves way too much room for vague, poetic language.
Right. You take the whole universe of ideas and you start ruthlessly bisecting it.
And Plato knows this is a really heavy, abstract concept for his students, so he has the stranger run a warm-up exercise with his dialogue partner, who is this young math student named Theaetetus.
The stranger basically says, before we hunt the massive, dangerous sophist, we need to practice throwing our logical net on something completely mundane. Let's define a humble fisherman, an angler.
And the way they do it is fascinating because it seems so tedious at first.
It really does seem tedious.
But it is actually deeply psychological training. They start with everything in existence.
Let's actually walk through it because it's fun. They say, okay, all art or expertise in the world is either productive, meaning you make something new, like a carpenter making a chair, or it is acquisitive, meaning you take something that already exists.
Well, an angler doesn't create fish out of nothing, right? He takes them. So we throw away the entire category of productive art. Our target is inside acquisitive art.
Exactly. We chopped the universe in half. Now we take acquisitive art and we split it again. Is it acquisition by voluntary exchange, like retail or bartering, or is it acquisition by conquest?
Well, the angler is conquering the fish. I mean, the fish didn't volunteer.
Yeah, they definitely didn't. So we are in conquest.
And divide conquest. Is it open fighting, like a gladiator or an army, or is it secret hunting?
The angler is a hunter. He uses stealth.
Right. Now, divide hunting. Are you hunting lifeless prey or living prey? Are you hunting living prey that walks on land or living prey that swims?
Swimming. Are you hunting swimming animals that live in the water, like fish, or swimming animals that live in the air, like waterfowl?
Water dwelling. The bisection just keeps going. It's relentless.
It really is. We are narrowing the net. So we have a hunter of water-dwelling creatures. Now, how do you catch them? Do you catch them by enclosing them in a physical net, or do you catch them by striking them?
The specific angler we are defining uses a hook, so it is the art of striking.
And finally, the last chop. Do you strike them from top to bottom, like spearfishing by firelight, or do you strike them from the bottom to the top?
A fishing hook is jerked from the bottom up, snagging the mouth of the fish.
Boom. The net has closed. By making binary choices, they have completely isolated and defined the angler.
What is so crucial to understand here is the language Plato uses. Terms like tracking, snaring, beating the bushes, trapping.
Yeah, it's very aggressive.
It is. You aren't just reading a dictionary definition, you're being taken on a predatory pursuit.
Mm-hmm.
Plato is training the reader's mind to categorize reality without mercy. He's building intellectual stamina.
Okay, so the warm-up is over. The young student, Theaetetus, understands how to throw the net. Now, they turn this exact algorithmic weapon on the main event, the Sophist.
But immediately they run into a problem.
Yeah, the Sophist is incredibly slippery. As they throw the net of dihairesis over him, they don't just catch him once, he keeps shape-shifting.
Right. The first time they run the division, the net catches him as a paid hunter of rich youth.
He doesn't hunt fish in the water, he hunts wealthy young men in the city of Athens.
Extracting exorbitant tuition fees in exchange for wisdom.
Then they run the tree again, taking slightly different branches, and the net catches him as a merchant. But he isn't selling physical food or wine, he is an importer and exporter of soul wares.
That is such a vivid, ancient concept, selling soul wares. I mean, what does that actually look like?
Well, it means he sells intellectual concepts, right?
Wow.
He packages up arguments, rhetorical tricks, and clever sayings, and he sells them to the highest bidder so those young men can go win lawsuits or get elected.
He doesn't care if the concepts are true, he only cares if they sell.
Exactly. So they run the net a third time, and he's caught as an heuristic.
Which means a combat athlete of debate. He engages in verbal wrestling matches just to humiliate his opponent for applause. Again, no care for truth, only victory.
But the sixth time they throw the net, we hit this massive scholarly tension in the text.
Yes, the purger of souls.
Exactly. The stranger describes a guy who uses cross-examination to cleanse people of their false conceit. He basically proves to someone that they don't actually know what they think they know.
Right, and by destroying their false confidence, he purges their soul, which opens them up to true learning.
Now, if you are a reader of Plato, you are screaming at the page right now, because that is the exact job description of Socrates.
It is. That is what the Socratic method is.
It is a brilliant, highly uncomfortable moment in the text. You have to ask, is Plato parodying his old master? Is he saying that, from a distance, the noble philosopher who wants to heal your soul and the mercenary sophist who wants to empty your wallet look dangerously identical?
The stranger actually pauses the hunt here. He is deeply reluctant to give the sophist this high, noble title of a soul purger.
He warns young Theaetetus that they have to be incredibly careful with their definitions here, because the sophist resembles this noble purger only as a wolf resembles a dog.
Think about that analogy for a second. The fiercest of wild animals compared to the gentlest of companions.
Yeah.
From a distance, standing on a hill in the twilight, a wolf and a dog have the exact same silhouette. They have the same basic anatomical shape. But one is loyal and will protect your home, and the other will tear your throat out.
Which connects so seamlessly to the modern world, you know? The sophist isn't just a guy in a toga arguing in the marketplace.
Not at all. The sophist is the modern wellness influencer selling you a lifestyle of purity and health that they don't actually live, secretly funded by supplement companies.
Right. The sophist is the algorithm feeding you a perfectly manufactured political outrage, designed to mimic righteous indignation, just to keep your eyeballs glued to a screen so they can sell your attention to advertisers.
The sophist is the politician who speaks with the cadence of a reformer but acts entirely as an heuristic athlete, disputing for viral sound bites rather than serving the public good.
They have the silhouette of a leader, but the appetite of a wolf.
Exactly. So to finally pin this shapeshifter down, they throw the net one last time, and the final capture is devastating. The sophist is definitively trapped as a master of agilopoia.
Agilopoia, the art of image-making.
Yes. He is a charlatan. He mimics reality. He creates fantastic appearances rather than true likenesses.
He doesn't actually possess knowledge about the state or justice or virtue. He possesses the highly polished appearance of knowledge.
He is the ancient equivalent of a deepfake.
But this raises a massive structural problem in the dialogue. If he's just a peddler of fake realities, if he's just telling lies, why is he so incredibly hard to defeat?
And that brings us to the great gridlock.
Because right as the stranger and Theaetetus are about to drag the sophist out of the bushes and expose him to the city, they hit a philosophical brick wall that literally halts the hunt in its tracks.
The trap the sophist brings on them is pure evil genius.
It really is. To understand it, we have to look at the lead detective, the Eleatic stranger. He was trained in the school of the great pre-Socratic philosopher Parmenides.
And Parmenides had established an absolute, unbreakable logical law in the ancient Greek world.
The law was absolute monism. Being is, and not being is not.
It sounds like abstract academic nonsense to a modern ear,
Yeah.
honestly. But in the ancient Greek world, this was the equivalent of the laws of thermodynamics.
Right.
You did not mess with it.
You couldn't. Parmenides taught that existence is a single, unchanging, unified whole. Therefore, you cannot think about not being. You cannot speak about nothingness.
Right.
Wait, hold on. Let me act as the proxy for the listener's brain here, because I'm trying to picture this.
Go for it.
If I have a clay cup on my desk and I drink all the water out of it, I can look inside and clearly say, there is nothing in this cup. I am talking about the nothingness inside the cup. Why couldn't the ancient Greeks just do that? Why was this such an unbreakable law?
Because to Parmenides, language and reality are perfectly fused. The moment you name the nothing in your cup, you have turned it into a something.
Oh, I see.
You have given it noun status. You are treating a void as if it possesses the property of existence, which is a logical paradox. To say nothing exists is a contradiction in terms. You cannot assign the verb is to the concept of not.
Wow, okay. So Parmenides concluded that all change, all emptiness, all separation is just an illusion. Only perfect, solid being exists.
Exactly.
Okay, so that is the foundational law of the stranger's entire worldview. Now, here comes the sophist. The stranger throws the net and says, "Aha! I caught you. You are an image maker. You sell falsehoods and illusions to the youth."
And the sophist casually replies, "Excuse me, what exactly is a falsehood?"
The stranger says, "A falsehood is stating that which is not."
And the trap snaps shut.
Snap. The sophist smiles and says, "But your own master, Parmenides, said that which is not doesn't exist. It's impossible to think it or speak it."
Therefore, if not being is physically and logically impossible, then falsehood is impossible. I literally cannot lie.
A lie is nothing, and you can't speak nothing. Every time I open my mouth, I'm speaking words, and words exist. Therefore, everything I say possesses being. Therefore, everything I say must be true.
The sophist completely hides himself in this dark, impenetrable fog of Parmenidean logic. It is the ultimate get-out-of-jail-free card.
It really is. By denying the metaphysical existence of nothingness, he eliminates the category of falsehood entirely.
If everything that is spoken is automatically true just by virtue of existing as speech, then all opinions are equally valid.
Which means the sophist just invented absolute relativism. My truth is my truth, your truth is your truth, because no statement can technically be false.
Precisely. If there is no falsehood, there is no difference between the philosopher seeking truth and the con artist seeking cash. It all flattens out into subjective noise.
So the Eleatic stranger is facing incredibly high stakes. To catch this liar, to save the very concept of objective truth in Athens, he has to do something unthinkable.
He has to commit what he calls intellectual parricide.
Right. He must lay hands on his philosophical father, Parmenides, and murder his foundational law.
He has to prove to the young student that, in a certain sense, not being is.
And doing that requires a total reimagining of how language, grammar, and reality actually work. The breakthrough he makes is honestly one of the most important moments in the history of Western thought.
The stranger realizes that Parmenides made a massive categorical error. Parmenides thought that not being meant absolute empty nothingness, a mystical void.
Like a black hole of existence.
Exactly.
Right.
But the stranger says, no, not being doesn't mean the opposite of existence. It simply means otherness.
Right.
It means relation. It means difference.
Let me use another analogy to ground this. If I hold up a red apple and I say to you, this apple is not an orange, I haven't just spoken a magical incantation that causes the apple to vanish into a black hole of non-existence.
No, you haven't.
I haven't summoned absolute nothingness. I am merely stating that the apple's identity is other than the identity of the orange.
The category of the not beautiful is just as real and possesses just as much being as the category of the beautiful. It is just a different relational space.
It is so elegant because it completely clears the fog. By redefining not being as otherness, Plato saves the concept of a lie.
A false statement isn't a statement about a mystical void of nothingness. A false statement is simply a statement that attributes qualities to a subject that are other than the realities that actually belong to it.
Let's actually build a false sentence right now to see how this works mechanically, because Plato introduces a new metaphysical grammar to explain this called the communion of kinds.
The Greek is koinonia tungenyon.
Yeah, he outlines 5 greatest kinds or universal forms that make up reality: being, motion, rest, sameness, and otherness.
And the key word is communion. They blend. The universe isn't a bucket of isolated objects that have no relation to one another.
The stranger uses this beautiful analogy of the alphabet. He says, think of language. You have consonants, which are hard, distinct, and immovable.
But you also have vowels. Vowels are the connective tissue. They run through all the letters and allow them to blend into actual pronounceable words.
Or think of music. Specific notes are distinct, but a master musician knows how they blend into a scale or a harmonic chord. The 5 kinds are the vowels of reality.
So let's build your full sentence. Let's look at the student in the dialogue, Theaetetus. He is currently sitting down, resting.
Okay, so if I look at him and say Theaetetus is flying, that is a lie. But how does it exist without violating Parmenides?
Let's run it through the grid of the 5 kinds. Does the subject Theaetetus exist?
Yes. He participates in being.
Does the verb flying exist as a concept in the world?
Yes, birds do it. So flying participates in being.
So far, Parmenides is happy. We're only using things that possess being.
Right.
But here is the trick. The statement connects the subject and the verb. It blends them. The statement says that flying is the same as Theaetetus' current action.
But in reality, his current state of rest is other than the state of motion required for flying.
Exactly. By interweaving being, sameness, and otherness, you have constructed a sentence where the parts are real, but the relationship between them is other than the facts.
The lie exists. It has structural reality. You aren't speaking nothingness. You are speaking a relational mismatch.
The interlocking web of the communion of kinds is what makes language, thought, and crucially false propositions structurally possible.
The structural integrity of objective reality is restored. The fog of relativism evaporates, and the sophist is dragged out of the bushes, securely netted as a fraud who traffics in relational mismatches.
Okay, so Plato solves the logical puzzle. He catches the con artist.
He builds this magnificent structural web of the communion of kinds to explain how the universe holds together.
But this is where the deep dive takes a massive turn.
Yeah, it does.
Because when we step back and place Plato's brilliant, towering philosophical machinery next to the biblical text, we start to see some profound friction.
We really do. We need to zoom out to the cosmic scale here. Because before the Illalicus stranger even solves the not being problem, he sets the stage by describing a mythological war for the very nature of reality. He calls it the Gigantomachia.
The War of the Giants.
This sounds like the ultimate Marvel movie setup. In Greek mythology, the Gigantomachia was the ancient war where the earthborn giants tried to overthrow the Olympian gods.
Right, but Plato uses it as an allegory for an intellectual civil war happening in Greece.
Tell me about the factions.
So on one side, you have the faction he calls the Sons of Earth. These are the crude materialists. Think of the early atomists like Democritus.
Okay, the atomists.
They only believe in what they can squeeze in their hands.
Yeah.
They can't touch it, like a rock or an oak tree. They say it doesn't exist. They pull everything down to the dirt.
And on the other side?
You have the Friends of Ideas. These are the extreme idealists. Ironically, they look a lot like Plato's own earlier followers.
Right. They retreat entirely into an invisible, unchanging, static world of abstract forms, totally divorced from messy physical reality.
It's the ultimate intellectual standoff, materialism versus idealism.
And Plato realizes you cannot build a functioning philosophy on either extreme. So the stranger forces a truce between the two armies.
He looks at the materialists and forces them to admit that invisible things like a just soul or a wise thought clearly exist and have a measurable effect on the physical world.
And he looks at the idealists and forces them to admit that perfect being cannot be a lifeless, unmoving, static statue. It has to have mind and life and interactivity.
And this is where Plato drops his massive compromise definition of existence. To bridge the gap between the materialists and the idealists, the stranger defines being as dynamis.
Dynamis, the Greek word for power.
Yes, but specifically in this context, it means the immanent power or capacity to act upon something else or to be acted upon.
So the stranger says that if a thing has the capacity to interact, however slightly, with another thing, it has being. It exists.
So in Plato's mind, existence is basically defined as interactivity within the grid. To be is to be capable of acting or being acted upon. It is a capacity.
But if we dynamically reframe this through the lens of redemptive history, through biblical theology, we hit a massive wall of contrast.
Oh, a huge one. Because in the Old Testament, being is not a passive philosophical category. It is not merely an impersonal capacity, a dynamis waiting to be triggered by an interaction.
This is where we have to look at the book of Exodus. Exodus 3.14.
The burning bush.
Yeah. Moses is standing at the burning bush in the desert. He is being tasked with an impossible mission to free the Israelites, and he asks God for his name. He is asking for God's core identity.
And God speaks from the fire. Eyesh, I am. WHO, I am. Or, I will be what I will be.
This is a fiercely active, self-existent, covenantal declaration. The biblical God doesn't exist because he participates in a complex Platonic grid of forms, balancing motion and rest and sameness.
Right, he isn't a node in a network of dynamics. He is the uncaused cause. He is a person.
That is a staggering contrast when you hold them side by side. In Plato's framework, the universe has this sort of co-eternal structure. The forms, the kinds, the grid of interactivity, they are just there.
They're the eternal architecture. And even the divine mind just navigates them. But the God of Scripture operates ex nihilo.
Out of nothing.
Right. Reality exists out of nothing simply because God speaks it into existence. The Hebrew word is debar, his spoken word.
He doesn't consult a pre-existing matrix of metaphysical vowels and consonants to form reality. His voice is the absolute foundation of all reality.
Plato's dynamics is an incredibly elegant way to describe the machinery of nature, but it falls infinitely short of the sovereign who actually built the machine.
But wait, even though their foundational metaphysics fundamentally clash, I want to point out that they actually share a stunning structural parallel when it comes to the problem of deception.
They absolutely do. Let's look at the target of our hunt again.
Yeah. Plato attacks the sophist for his aidopoia, his deceptive image-making. The sophist manufactures a verbal illusion, a fake reality, and sells it to gullible people who end up trapped in ignorance, completely alienated from the truth.
And if you flip your Bible open to the prophet Isaiah, specifically Isaiah 44, you find an exact blistering parallel.
Oh, I love this part. Isaiah writes this incredibly sarcastic, poetic satire against physical idols. The Hebrew word is peddle.
Break down that poetry for us, because Isaiah's tone here is almost mocking.
It absolutely is mocking. Isaiah describes a craftsman who cuts down a cedar tree. He takes half of the wood, throws it in the fire to roast his dinner, and uses the coals to keep himself warm.
Very practical.
Right. Then he takes the exact same wood from the other half of the tree, carves it into a block, paints it, bows down to it, and says, "Save me, you are my God."
It's objectively ridiculous when you put it like that.
Yeah.
You cooked a lamb chop over the other half of your God.
It is ridiculous, and Isaiah is explicitly pointing out the profound cognitive blindness of it.
Both classical philosophy and Plato's sophist, and the prophetic witness of Scripture in Isaiah, are diagnosing the exact same mechanism of human failure.
We manufacture a lie. Whether it is a block of wood painted gold by a craftsman, or a highly sophisticated verbal illusion crafted by an influencer or a politician.
We construct a fake reality, we choose to worship it, and in the process, we lose our minds. We become spiritually and intellectually blind.
We fall in love with the image instead of the substance.
Precisely. They both diagnose the deep vulnerability of the human heart to worship the counterfeit.
Okay, so Plato and the prophets agree on the disease, the counterfeit image. But what about the cure? How does the universe actually hold together against the chaos of these lies?
We noted earlier that Plato's ultimate solution is the communion of kinds.
Right. It's a grammatical interlocking of being, sameness, and otherness. It's a grid. It works logically. It solves the Parmenides problem. But it is cold. It is abstract. It is entirely impersonal.
And this brings us to the ultimate Christological pivot in the New Testament. The human heart has this deep, desperate longing for cosmic coherence.
We want to know that the universe isn't just a chaotic swirl of disconnected atoms or a brutal battleground of political spin.
We want to know it actually holds together. The New Testament answers this deep longing not with a cold philosophical grid, but with a warm, intensely personal reality.
You are thinking of Colossians 1.
Yes. The Apostle Paul writes in Colossians 1:15-17 about the incarnate Christ. He calls Jesus the image of the invisible God.
The true image, the perfect likeness, not the counterfeit aidopoia of the sophist.
And then Paul says that Christ is before all things, and in him all things hold together. The Greek word there is synestoken.
Synestoken, meaning holding together, consisting, maintaining cohesion.
Right. The ultimate glue of the universe isn't a dialectical division. It isn't a philosophical abstraction of vowels and consonants.
The ultimate glue is the sovereign, active word made flesh.
Jesus Christ is the true communion. In him, the fractures of reality are reconciled.
Plato reached the absolute summit of human reason, trying to find the unifying theory of everything, and he ended up with a mathematical web.
While Paul looks at the exact same cosmic requirement and reveals a living savior.
Wow. That is the difference between reading the blueprint of a house and actually meeting the architect who built it.
Beautifully put.
Which perfectly transitions us into the final turn of our conversation. Historical roots and modern takeaways.
Because when you see how remarkably close Plato got to defining the architecture of deception, you understand why the early Christian thinkers didn't just throw this pagan text in the trash.
They actively used it. Let's look at the patristic playbook.
The early church fathers are fascinating in how they handled classical philosophy. You have to remember the cultural milieu of the 2nd and 3rd century Roman Empire.
These early Christians were swimming in a Greco-Roman culture built entirely on Platonic and Aristotelian thought.
They didn't burn Plato. They co-opted him. They baptized his vocabulary.
Clement of Alexandria is a prime example of this, isn't he?
Yes, Clement, writing in the 2nd century, used a strategy that scholars often call the theft of the Greeks.
The theft of the Greeks. I love that.
He essentially argued that any true insight Plato had was either borrowed directly from Moses and the Hebrew prophets, or it was given to him by God's common grace.
So Clement takes Plato's massive hunt for the deceptive sophist, his entire critique of Aigepoia, and applies it directly to unmasking the spiritual emptiness of pagan idols.
He essentially uses their own intellectual weapons against them. He says to the Greeks, "Look, your own greatest philosopher told you that worshiping manufactured images is the death of the rational soul.
We Christians are just taking Plato's logic seriously and applying it to your temples."
It is brilliant rhetorical jujitsu. He uses Plato to clear the ground for the gospel.
And then you have Augustine a bit later, who does something even more profound.
Right. Augustine takes Plato's independent, co-eternal forms, this abstract grid of being and sameness, and he places them entirely within the creative mind of the sovereign creator God.
They aren't independent forces anymore. They are the thoughts of God.
And Eusebius of Caesarea takes a similar historical view, right?
Right. In his monumental work, Preparatio Evangelica, which translates to the preparation for the gospel, Eusebius looks back at Plato's communion of kinds.
He sees Plato desperately trying to explain how a chaotic universe is harmonized by these intersecting invisible principles.
Eusebius views this entire philosophical effort as a secular signpost. It was a desperate human attempt to explain harmony that providentially prepared the Greek mind to receive the dynamic Trinitarian creation theology of Genesis and the Gospel of John.
When the Christian apostles showed up in Greek cities talking about the Logos, the divine reason made flesh, the Greeks already had a God-shaped hole in their philosophy waiting for exactly that concept.
So, bridging the ancient to the modern, we have to ask the ultimate practical question. Why should you, the listener, care about this?
Why read a secular, extremely dense 2,400-year-old debate over not being today?
Because, as we promised at the very beginning, this text is an intellectual whetstone. We are currently swimming in a digital sea of Aigepoia.
We are drowning in it.
We really are. Think about the landscape we navigate every single day. Deepfakes that look indistinguishable from reality.
AI-generated news articles explicitly designed to swing elections.
Relativistic spin on cable news where my truth and your truth are treated as equally valid, effectively canceling out objective reality.
Politicians and media pundits who act exactly like Plato's heuristic athletes. They aren't disputing to find the truth. They are disputing for clicks.
For algorithmic engagement, for the tribal applause of their followers.
The sophist is no longer a guy standing on a soapbox in the Athenian agora trying to get some coins from rich kids.
No. The sophist is the fundamental architecture of our digital age.
And Plato trains you to fight back. He teaches you how to use dihairesis, logical division, to dissect an argument before you swallow it.
When you hear a viral claim, you learn to run the binary tree. You ask, is this statement based on observed historical fact, or is it based on emotional manipulation? You chop it in half.
Does this person profit from my outrage, or are they seeking clarity? Chop it again.
You learn to spot the charlatans hiding in the modern fog of not being by demanding strict definitions, by refusing to let terms blur together into a subjective mess.
It builds cultural vigilance. It stops you from being a passive consumer of soul wares. If you don't know how to define reality, someone else will happily define it for you, and they will charge you for the privilege.
Which brings us to the gospel finale. Let's close the thematic journey of this deep dive.
Let's do it.
Plato's Sophist is a magnificent, elegant monument to human reason. It beautifully diagnoses our innate vulnerability to deception.
It rigorously maps out our deep existential longing for order and objective truth.
But, logic alone cannot save. Human reason, no matter how sharp the algorithm, no matter how precise the dihairesis, can only define the disease.
It can point out the wolf in dog's clothing. It can tell you that you are being lied to, but it cannot transform the wolf.
It cannot cure the soul. It takes the historical revelation of the personal triune God to do that.
Going back to that word dynamis, which Plato used to describe the cold, immanent power of existence.
Yes. For the Apostle Paul, dynamis isn't just an ontological taxonomy. It isn't just a label for how abstract concepts interact in a void.
Paul says in Romans 1:16, I am not ashamed of the gospel, for it is the dynamis of God for salvation to everyone who believes.
It is explosive, redemptive power. Plato cleared the brush, he built the net, and he exposed the lie. But only the Word made flesh can step into that clearing, tear the net of deception, and actually set the captive free.
What an incredible journey. From the hunting nets of ancient Athens to the burning bush of Exodus, right up to the digital deepfakes on your phone today.
We want to thank you for joining us in the hunting net today, navigating the depths of ancient logic and biblical truth.
It's a heavy lift, but it is so necessary for discerning the times we live in. Keep questioning, keep running the divisions, don't let the fog settle.
Absolutely. And as we sign off, I want to leave you with one final, totally different thought to mull over on your own.
A provocative one.
We've spent this entire time talking about the sophist as a human actor, a mercenary, a politician, an influencer hiding in the dark woods.
Right.
But when you look at the algorithmic architecture of our world today, the neural networks, the massive generative models, what if the final ultimate realization of Plato's nightmare isn't a human sophist at all?
Oh, wow.
What if we have successfully automated aijulopoia? If artificial intelligence can generate infinite, perfectly tailored counterfeit realities without any human malice driving it, if the illusion maker is just code, how do we cast a hunting net over a machine that has no soul to purge?
Happy hunting.